Hey everyone, this is D, Movieman, fellow cinephile, popcorn addict, and emerging film critic, coming to you with reliable recaps, reviews, and reactions. So today I am coming to you all with a review for the film Passing, directed by Rebecca Hall and starring Tessa Thompson, Ruth Negga, and Holland. So Passing is based on the 1929 novel of the same name written by Nella Larsen. It tells the story of two mixed-race women, Irene Redfield and Clare, who were childhood friends but end up bumping into each other again as adults. So from there, they begin to unexpectedly reconnect, their relationship develops, and as the parallels and internal conflicts in their individual lives begin to converge, their journey together becomes very tense and tragically complicated. So this film had its premiere at the Sundance Film Festival, and I actually had the opportunity to see this as an attendee. The Sundance Film Festival is something I've always wanted to attend and be a part of and have that experience, but I honestly never had the opportunity. So this was basically a collaboration with the Atlanta Film Society, the Plaza Theater in Atlanta, and of course the Sundance Institute. So for those who don't know, the Plaza Theater is the oldest operating and only independent cinema in Atlanta. It's been around since 1939, which is just a little over 80 years. So what was really unique about it is that this was a drive-in world premiere. We were able to attend from the comfort and safety of our cars and still be able to experience the film and see the commentary, get an introduction from Rebecca Hall, and overall this was a really awesome experience, and I'm so glad I had a chance to be a part of it. So shout out to the Atlanta Film Society, shout out to the Plaza Theater, and of course shout out to the Sundance Film Festival and the Sundance Institute. So thankful for this, and I appreciate all of them for making it happen. So let's get into the pros. So Passing marks the feature directorial debut for Rebecca Hall. You may also be familiar with her as an actress. First time I remember seeing her was in the film Vicky Cristina Barcelona, starring Penelope Cruz, Javier Bardem, and Scarlett Johansson. But she's also been in Iron Man 3, The Gift, and Professor Marston in the Wonder Woman. And if you've seen my Godzilla vs. Kong trailer reaction video, you know that she'll be starring in that as well. So part of Rebecca Hall's inspiration for directing this film is her own racial background. She was raised by a biracial mother with African American, Native American, Scottish, and Dutch ancestry. As far as a first-time director, I actually thought she did a pretty solid job. And I think her perspective for this film was so unique and interesting. I would definitely be interested in seeing what's next for her as far as directing. I really did appreciate the cinematography, the production, and the style of this film. I love that they chose to make it black and white. Not only did it give me that old Hollywood feeling of films that were made in the 1920s and the 1930s, but I think it made everything stand out in a way that it might not have with color. Everything looked very stylized, very distinct. All these great shots of the trees and the city, the brownstones, even the close-ups of Irene and Clare. And then there were other moments that felt very surreal and kind of ethereal, like we were watching a dream. I think sometimes when we think about black and white and desaturation, we kind of figure it'll flatten the film. But I actually think that was a great choice because it made it as a film stand out in a very unique way visually. I think Tessa Thompson did a nice job with her performance. I still remember seeing her in For Colored Girls back in 2010. I really enjoyed her in that film, and of course all these years later we see her in a little bit of everything. She's probably most known though for her role as Valkyrie in Thor Ragnarok. And of course, between that film and this is a very different performance. That film is so colorful and over the top and in your face and hilarious. And this film is the opposite. And so is her character. You know, Valkyrie is a very bold, brash, take no prisoners type of character. Irene is someone who is tense and withdrawn and conflicted and always hiding a part of herself. She has a very simple life, and Claire's reappearance suddenly complicates that. And I think it can be very difficult to portray restraint without coming off as flat, but I actually think she pulled it off. Now, as far as Ruth Negga, I knew that she was nominated for the Best Actress Oscar for her role in Loving. I also knew that she starred in the AMC series Preacher. However, I hadn't seen either of those projects, so whereas I usually have a reference point for an actress or an actor, in this case, I was going in totally new. And she absolutely blew me away. And it's crazy because I didn't even realize it was her when she came on screen. And I think once she was there, it's just like, I don't know. I mean, it was just a very transcendent performance. I think she really brought Clare to life. Her charm, her charisma, her beauty, her infectious personality, and inner conflicts. I mean, like, wow. Like, she really caught me by surprise. And I think that's great because it completely helps you understand that although there are obvious conflicts in Irene and Claire's relationship, you also see why she can't fully seem to let Claire go, because she brings such an energy and such a rhythm and such a delicate nature to Irene's life. Irene's life is the total opposite of that, and being around her is just something different. And I think even as a viewer, I felt that every time she was on screen. So although I do think they both did a great job, I think that Ruth Negga might have stole this one away. I wouldn't be surprised if she was nominated for something for a performance, because it really is that good. I was also so happy to see Andre Holland in this. Andre Holland is another actor I enjoy who is so underrated in my opinion. He of course starred in Moonlight, but he also was in 42, in Selma, American Horror Story, Castle Rock, A Wrinkle in Time, and now Passing. He stars in this film as Brian, Irene's husband, and he becomes the unlikely middleman between Claire and Irene. I think he did a great job as far as the male presence in the film. I love the grounded, level-headed energy he brings to his performances, and I definitely think he did that here as well. I also love that this film has such a minimalist, simplistic approach to the story. Nothing was too over the top or in your face. I even think the styling and the creation of the 1920s was even understated. We weren't necessarily being hit over the head with the fact that it was the 1920s with music and with loud, flashy costumes, but in a very understated, subtle way, we can see what time period this is, and we can also see the world in which it's set in. And I think that was such a nice touch. Made it feel very intimate and understated. And I think this quiet, understated approach sometimes can have more of a presence than just, being loud and being flashy. So I'm glad that Rebecca Hall took that approach with this story. So I am going to move over to the cons. I think my biggest struggle with this film was its story and the progression of said story and the ending. Now, as I said, this is based on a novel, and from what I was able to read, this doesn't seem to stray too far from the original novel, but there are a lot of themes in the novel that are very ambiguous, very open-ended, and I understand that and I can appreciate that, but I think as far as the film, I think everything felt a little too unclear. Everything kind of felt like we were raising questions but not answering them. And listen, I'm definitely not the type to need a story that explains everything, that crosses every T and dots every I. I definitely like ambiguity. I definitely like open-endedness. But I think in this film, there just was too much of it. Like everything just felt too like, what are we saying? It kind of feels like the film is lacking a focus or a perspective or a point of view. It's just kind of like we're watching the story unfold, but there's not really a connection there because we don't fully understand what we're connecting to. I went into this thinking that we were going to get some of the dynamics of racial passing. We know that that's something that was very real throughout history for mixed race people, and how beneficial and dangerous it could be for the people who chose to do that. There's a really great opening scene where you see Irene being very mindful of her mannerisms and the fact that she has this hat on, and she is kind of being very careful with the way she speaks and the way she moves, and she's trying not to show, too much of her face, and speaking to this white store clerk. And I love that scene because it immediately brought us into the reality of the times, into the reality of these characters, and the tension of that. I really enjoyed that. And I thought we were going to get more of that, but we kind of raised the idea of passing and what that would look like, the dynamics and the conflicts of that, but then we just kind of leave it by the wayside. It's like after a certain point, it's not about that anymore. And that frustrated me because I thought that was such an interesting story to tell. There's so much you could really pull from there. There are so many psychological and emotional questions that raises, and I didn't feel like we got any of that, and that's something I was really hoping for. I definitely appreciate the fact that this was sticking to the source material, but I also think from a directing standpoint, it would have been great to add a little something to enhance the material a bit and really dig deeper in the dynamics in this story between these characters in this world and in this time period. So that's something that I was hoping for, and I didn't really get that. And I also think that approach throws the pacing off. You guys know I love a slow moving film. I love slow progression, building things up in a film, but it never felt like we really got anywhere. So it just kind of felt like we were just kind of waiting for things to happen, and things really didn't happen. So that was kind of frustrating also, because I found so much of this film to be so layered and so interesting and intriguing. And I just think we could have really done a lot more with the premise and the idea of this. And I felt like we never really got there the way I thought we would. It all feels very unresolved, and I didn't necessarily want to feel that. I wanted to feel more connected to these characters. I wanted to be more connected to the story. I wanted to be more connected to what was happening. And I think there's just a lot of potential to expand and elevate things a little bit, and we didn't quite do that. So I think from a narrative and storytelling perspective, it was kind of a letdown for me, which sucks because I think there was some really great potential for that, and I just wish we would have had the chance to see it. So I'm going to give Passing a C+. I think this was a very distinctive film. I think this was a very unique film, and I appreciated so much about it, from Rebecca Hall's direction to Tessa Thompson and Ruth Negga's performances, to the cinematography and the style and the visuals, and I loved all of that. I just wish we had gotten more substance along with the style, because that's the only thing that was really missing for me. I think that would have really brought this all together in a really interesting way. But overall, I was still so thankful and so appreciative to be able to see this, to be there for the world premiere, to be a part of the Sundance Film Festival, and I'm really just grateful for the chance to have had this experience. So, once again, this is D, Movieman, signing off, and I'll see you at the movies.